Have you ever caught yourself staring at a woman who captivates you completely, and wondered what invisible threads guide her heart, her choices, even her deepest vulnerabilities? Before you jump to conclusions or think you understand her, pause for a moment. Ask yourself, do you really know what makes even the strongest woman hesitate, stumble, or quietly falter? And, as a man, are you aware that your actions can either shield her from pain or inadvertently wound her in ways she may never show? Today, I'm about to share something that most men only realize when it's already too late: the core weaknesses of women that every man should understand. This isn't about manipulation or trickery. This is about insight, mastery, and understanding love on a profound level. Guided by the timeless wisdom of Marcus Aurelius and Stoic philosophy, we'll uncover truths about the heart, human fragility, and the delicate balances that govern attraction and care. But before we dive in, my friend, do yourself a favor. Hit that subscribe button and like this video if you're someone who wants to understand love, not through control, but through genuine awareness and mastery. Stick with me until the end, because these insights could not only transform your relationships, they might completely reshape how you approach love itself. Now, let's set the stage together. Picture this: Rome, nearly 2,000 years ago. A powerful emperor, commanding armies and holding the fate of nations in his hands, yet wrestling with the same quiet, intimate questions of the heart that you or I face today. Marcus Aurelius. His private journals aren't just filled with strategies of leadership, they explore love, vulnerability, human weakness, and yes, even the hidden frailties of women's hearts. So, let's begin with one truth that resonates through time: her heart craves validation. Even if she appears confident. Have you ever stood across the room, quietly observing her? The woman who seems to have it all together, laughing with friends, phone buzzing with messages, posture poised, eyes bright with assurance. At that moment, you might assume she needs no one's approval. Certainly not yours. But here's where the real story begins. Beyond what the eye can see. This isn't a bullet point, it's a lived experience. Years ago, I was in love with a woman named Sarah. She wasn't just beautiful, her presence carried a certain gravity. A kind of effortless command that made the world take notice. When she entered a room, it felt as if space itself shifted around her. I, like many others, was quietly drawn in, mesmerized. I assumed she was untouchable, immune to doubt or insecurity. And yet, one quiet evening over coffee, everything changed. She leaned in, voice barely above a whisper, and asked me, "Do you think I'm enough?" That question, soft, tentative, almost hidden, hit me like a shock. How could the unstoppable, radiant Sarah question her worth? The truth is, beneath even the strongest exterior lies a tender, vulnerable heart. Behind laughter, behind composure, behind every confident glance, there's often a silent question she doesn't always voice. Am I truly seen? Am I truly chosen? Have you ever loved someone like that? Someone who, to the world, seems invincible, yet in your quiet moments together reveals the soft, fragile pieces of herself? That delicate contrast between strength and vulnerability is the gateway to understanding her on a level most men never reach. And as we move forward, keep this image in mind: it's just the beginning. The first insight opens the door, but there's so much more to uncover. On the next page, we'll explore how these hidden truths shape her desires, her fears, and how you, as a man, can become the one who truly sees her. Continuing from what we discovered about Sarah, Let's dive deeper into what it really means to understand a woman's heart. Have you ever loved someone like that? Someone who appears strong, confident, and unshakable to the world, yet in the quiet, intimate moments you share, reveals the tender, breakable corners of her heart? If you have, then you already know what I mean when I say, even the boldest, most seemingly self-assured woman often seeks validation. Not from every man, not from the crowd, but from the man she truly respects. The one whose words carry meaning and weight. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, may never have written love letters to the women of Rome, or at least none that survived, but he left us wisdom that transcends time. The opinion of others only matters if you choose to value it. Simple words, yet profound in their implications. Sarah didn't crave praise from strangers, from the applause of a crowd. What she wanted was far more subtle, far more meaningful. Acknowledgement from me, someone whose gaze carried sincerity, whose words weren't empty gestures. And here is where many men, myself included at times, get it wrong. We rush to shower compliments, to reassure, to flood her with words, thinking that more is better. But when praise comes too easily, it loses its impact. It becomes background noise, a melody she barely hears, not the resonance she longs for. Marcus Aurelius would advise us to hold our praise as though it were a precious coin. Spend it wisely, not as a game, but because true value is born from scarcity. When you recognize both her strength and her vulnerability, when you acknowledge not only her beauty but the soft, unseen parts of her heart, and say, I see you, not just what she shows to the world but who she really is, that's when your words truly land. Ask yourself now, have you ever loved someone who pretends she needs nothing, yet silently yearns to know she matters? Can you recall the look in her eyes when your praise was genuine, free from flattery, pure truth? That moment transforms love from mere performance into true presence. Because a woman's heart does not weaken by wanting to be seen. It's a universal truth. We all desire to be truly chosen. And if you learn to offer that acknowledgement without losing your own center, you become unforgettable. Marcus Aurelius might describe this as the quiet strength that turns validation from manipulation into deep, meaningful connection. And this is just the beginning of understanding her inner world, where emotions often surge faster than rational thought. Have you ever been caught off guard by how quickly her mood could shift? One instant she's laughing at something small you said, and the next, her face darkens, her words sharpen, and suddenly you feel like you're standing in the middle of a storm you never saw coming. Let me illustrate with a story that may feel familiar. Years ago, I fell for a woman named Lena. She was warm, vibrant, and alive in a way that made being near her feel like standing by a fire on a freezing night. Yet beneath that warmth, there was another side, one that I didn't understand at first. One evening, we went out for dinner. The night was perfect. Soft music played in the background. Candles flickered gently on the tables, and the hum of conversation surrounded us. But as the night unfolded, I began to notice the subtle signals of her inner world, the delicate balance of joy and unease that existed just below the surface. The music was still soft and flowing, the candlelight still flickering, and the conversations around us murmured like the background of a serene painting. Yet suddenly, Lena fell silent. Her eyes drifted away from me, settling on the plate in front of her. I asked if something was wrong, but she simply shook her head, forcing a faint, uneasy smile. A few minutes later, The words she had been holding back spilled out. "Why did you sound so cold when you answered the phone earlier? Who was calling you?" I was stunned. My mind instantly began searching for an explanation, for a way to reassure her. To me, it had been just a quick, meaningless call, but to her, it was like a tiny crack in the solid wall of trust. And then, that crack in her heart quickly widened into a deep, unbridgeable chasm. Have you ever found yourself in that situation? Watching the person you love suddenly swept away by waves of emotion so strong they wash away every calm thought? You want to pull them back to shore, but you don't know how. In moments like these, Marcus Aurelius seems to whisper across the centuries, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Lena's struggle was not a sign of weakness, at least not in the way many men tend to think. It was proof that she was profoundly human, deeply real, and as a man, I learned something valuable. When she is drowning in emotional chaos, your calm can be the lifeline that saves you both. Marcus once wrote, "Stand firm as a rock against which the waves continually break." Picture that. Fierce waves, white with foam, crashing again and again into the rock, but the rock does not shout back. It does not collapse. It remains there, steady, grounded, silent. That was exactly what Lena needed from me. Though at the time neither of us could name it. She didn't need me to argue, to panic, or to mirror her fear. She needed me to listen, to keep my voice gentle but unwavering, to hold her hand, not to drag her away from her emotions, but to show her, through my stillness, that the storm would pass. Have you ever tried to calm her with explanations and debate, only to watch her grow even more upset? And have you ever, instead, simply sat beside her, patient, steady, and seen her finally exhale, relieved? That is what Marcus meant. When the woman you love is caught in emotional tides, the greatest gift you can give her is not to fix everything, but to help her find her way back to herself. Because true weakness is not in having emotions. Emotions are what make her alive, beautiful, and deeply connected. Weakness lies only in letting those emotions steer every thought and action without pause, without reflection. As a man, your calm presence is not coldness, it is love in its quietest, most powerful form, and sometimes, it speaks louder than any words. Yet behind it all, there often lingers a silent fear, the fear of loneliness. Even in the most independent-looking women. Have you ever loved a woman who swore she didn't need anyone? A woman who walked through life as if the world itself bent to her will. And yet, if you looked closely, you'd notice, hidden behind the laughter and the late-night stories, was an emptiness far deeper than you imagined. I want to tell you about someone who taught me this lesson in the most unexpected way. Her name was Amal, a captivating woman, with a thriving career, friends everywhere, and a schedule so packed that just looking at it made me dizzy. The first time we met, she said straight out, "I'm not the kind of woman who needs a man to complete me." And I believed her, because everything about her life seemed to prove it. Yet as the weeks went by, I began to notice the tiny cracks in what looked like flawless armor. One evening, after a long day, we sat together on the balcony of her apartment, overlooking the city lights. Our conversation drifted from work to old memories, and then slowly faded into silence. Amal took a deep breath and softly said the words I still remember to this day. "I hate going home to an empty apartment. Sometimes I just stay out to avoid it." I was taken aback. This woman who seemed to have the whole world under her control was In truth, quietly battling the shadows that waited for her whenever the laughter faded. Have you ever seen that in someone? That subtle contradiction between a fiercely independent exterior and a quiet fear of being alone. I thought of Marcus Aurelius, who once reminded himself, "Do not long for what you do not have. Focus instead on the best and finest of what you do have." But for Amal, the best thing she longed for wasn't a crowded room, it was a soul who would choose her. And keep choosing her, even in silence. Her weakness wasn't her independence, that was her strength. The weakness was the fear that beneath that independence. There was something unlovable, so she kept moving, kept talking, kept filling the empty spaces, afraid of what she might hear if she stood still. Marcus also wrote, "Guard your intentions." And as a man, this is where you must be most careful, to see her fear. Yet never feed it, to offer presence, not possession, because there is a fine line between being her comfort and becoming her escape. I learned this slowly. Instead of rushing to fill her silences, I stayed beside her. There were moments when we sat together in complete quiet, no phones, no music. At first, she fidgeted, checked the time, looked away, but over time, she grew still. She came to understand that loneliness does not have to mean emptiness, and that the right kind of presence can turn silence from something frightening into something safe. Have you ever been that person for someone? The one who makes her realize she doesn't have to perform to keep you there? That, my friend, is the subtle power Marcus spoke of, not to erase her fear, but to show her she is not truly alone. Because even the most capable, fiercely independent woman carries, somewhere deep inside, a faint shadow of loneliness. And if you can see that shadow, not to control her, but to honor her, you become more than just someone she welcomes in the light. You become the one she trusts in the dark. And that kind of trust is rarer than love itself. But there's another truth you need to see, one that surprised me when I first encountered it. It's about the pull of status over character. Have you ever wondered why a wise, warm, and thoughtful woman might still feel drawn to a man whose depth is shallow, yet whose status shines like a spotlight? I learned this lesson through someone named Rana. She was graceful, educated, with a kindness that made even strangers feel truly seen. When we first met, it felt like we spoke the same secret language, late-night talks about philosophy, shared laughter over little things, and silences that felt comfortable instead of awkward. For a time, I believed with all my heart that, for her, character would always outweigh status. And then, he appeared. A man whose very presence seemed to shift the air in the room. An expensive watch catching the light. Confident words casually laced with names of distant places he'd visited and influential people he knew. His smile hinted at secrets, his posture radiated power. To me, he seemed all surface, without substance. To her, he seemed magnetic. At first, I tried to ignore the sinking feeling in my chest. But over the following days and weeks, I watched her attention drift. Her texts came later. Her laughter felt less frequent. Her eyes, once locked into ours, occasionally wandered somewhere far away. It hurt, not just as a man who cared for her, but as someone who had believed, perhaps too naively, that character alone was enough. Have you ever felt that? That quiet ache of realizing she's not immune to the pull of status, even if her heart is good? Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "How ridiculous and how strange to be surprised at anything which happens in life." Those words humbled me, because the truth is, Status itself isn't evil. It's an ancient language of attraction, etched deep into human nature. Long before luxury brands or social media, women were drawn to men whose position promised security, whose reputation hinted at strength. It was about survival, not vanity. But here's where the weakness lies. Sometimes the symbol blinds her to the substance. She may mistake loud confidence for quiet virtue, reputation for reality, and power for goodness. Marcus offers us something better. Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. So instead of resenting her attraction to status, I chose to become the kind of man whose character creates its own gravity, not by competing with wealth I didn't have, but by becoming what status can never buy. I learned to stay calm even when the storm rolled in, to keep my honesty in the smallest moments, and to remain loyal even when no one was watching. Gradually, I saw her eyes return, not because I was richer than him, but because what I gave her had depth, not just a glossy coat of decoration. Ask yourself, have you ever felt the urge to display a few symbols of power just to catch someone's gaze? Or are you brave enough to believe that your quiet, steady nature can speak the loudest, even if it speaks more slowly? Status may open the first door, but character is what decides who stays. That's a truth Marcus Aurelius lived and understood in the marble halls of Rome, and to this day, it remains unchanged. So remember, her weakness is not that she notices the allure of status. The weakness only appears if she forgets to look beyond the surface. And your task is not to judge her, but to become the kind of man whose silent presence is enough to say, "Here stands true value." Not just dazzling light. But then, I realized there was another challenge, not from status or outward charm, but from time itself. It's when you love someone who always lives in the future, where fear and hope overshadow the present. Have you ever loved someone like that? A woman whose mind is always running a few steps ahead, constantly worrying about tomorrow or dreaming about what hasn't happened yet, to the point that she rarely stands still beside you in the quiet of today. Let me tell you about such a person, Amina. She was gentle, thoughtful, with eyes that always seemed to look right past the present, chasing something only she could see. When we were together, she would often speak about all the scenarios that could happen. What if one day I no longer loved her? What if her job changed? What if we moved to another city, got married, had children, and then everything fell apart? Sometimes, she would build beautiful castles in the sky, trips we had never booked, celebrations we had never planned, perfect versions of ourselves we had yet to become. At first, I found it endearing. Her hope felt sweet, her fear felt sincere, but slowly, I began to see how those imagined futures were quietly stealing from our present moments. One evening, as the sunset faded, I held her hand and softly said, "Look, right now, it's just us. No mistakes from the past. No fears of the future. Just this moment." But her gaze dimmed again. Her mind had already left, rushing toward questions even she couldn't answer. Have you ever been there? Standing next to someone, yet their heart is always 2 steps ahead or 2 steps behind. Never truly beside you in the present? Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself every day, do not let the future disturb you. You will meet it, if you must, when it comes. And then I realized, just like the future, you'll only meet it when the time comes. And when that moment arrives, you will still face it with the same weapons of reason that today are helping you stand firm in the present. Amina's weakness wasn't that she loved too little. On the contrary, She loved so deeply that she became trapped in the whirlpool of what ifs. Hope for a perfect tomorrow, fear of a painful tomorrow, both quietly stole away the peace of today. As men, our instinct is often to reassure, to promise that nothing bad will happen. We want to paint a flawless, untarnished future to ease the fears of the one we love. But as Marcus Aurelius reminds us, the future is not ours to give. The only thing we truly have is the present. So, instead of building ever bigger dreams or making promises I couldn't keep, I learned to do something much simpler: just sit beside her. In silence, to listen to the soft breeze drifting through the evening window, to feel the warmth of her hand, and to notice how her heartbeat gradually slowed each time she stopped chasing her endless stream of thoughts. Have you ever touched that moment? The moment when the person you love finally looks at you, not through the lens of what might happen, but simply seeing you, here and now, as you are. That is the power of presence. Her weakness isn't loving too much, it's letting tomorrow steal today. And your strength isn't in predicting the future, it's in making the present feel so real, so safe, that she pauses her race forward. Marcus Aurelius understood this centuries ago. Confine yourself to the present. Because love, in its purest form, can only be fully lived in this breath, this heartbeat, this very moment, and sometimes, helping her remember that is the most profound gift you can give. But the story doesn't end here. There's another kind of entrapment, not in the future, but in the gaze of others. Have you ever watched the woman you love getting ready in the morning? Not just for herself, but as if she could hear the invisible whispers of everyone she might meet that day. Let me tell you about Marianne, the one who showed me this silent battle more clearly than anyone else. Marianne was intelligent, witty, and the kind of person who could light up a room without saying a word. She had opinions sharp as blades and dreams big enough to fill an entire notebook. Yet behind that bright energy was a quiet war she fought every single day. I first noticed it on the days we went out together. She would try on outfit after outfit, pausing in front of the mirror with questions that weren't really questions at all. Is this too much? Too plain? What will people think? At first, I would just smile and say, "You look perfect." But that answer never truly erased her doubts, because she wasn't dressing for me, or even just for herself. She was dressing for them, the faceless, they, who might praise, criticize, or whisper judgments she would never actually hear directly. Have you ever loved someone like that? Someone whose heart is so attuned to the imagined voices of others that her own voice can barely speak louder. It was Marcus Aurelius who gave me the words to describe that feeling, something I had vaguely sensed, but never fully understood. He wrote, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than anyone else, yet we care more about the opinion of others than our own." The first time I read that, I felt as if the portrait of Marianne appeared right before my eyes, and to be honest, sometimes I saw myself in it too. I remember one evening when she came to me looking exhausted, both frustrated and drained. That afternoon, Marianne had spent hours editing a single post for social media. But just as she was about to hit publish, she deleted it, not because she didn't like it, but because of an invisible fear, the fear of what strangers, people she might never meet, might say or think. She looked at me, her eyes almost breaking, and asked softly, "Why'd I care so much?" In that moment, I didn't give a lecture. I didn't say that hollow phrase, "Don't care what other people think." Instead, I recalled Marcus's advice. Lead by example, not just words. So I chose something very simple. I shared something raw, unpolished, an imperfect moment from my own life. No editing, no waiting for anyone's approval. She watched me, saw me still sitting there, calm and unshaken, untouched by the silence or any possible judgment. And in her eyes, I noticed the slightest shift, enough for me to realize that a seed of freedom had just begun to sprout. Have you ever done that? Not telling her, the world will keep turning, but letting her see it for herself through the way you live? Her weakness isn't vanity, it's the heavy burden of a world that has taught her to measure her worth by other people's eyes. And if you love her, your role isn't to scold her for caring too much, it's to live so firmly in your own truth that she slowly learns to do the same. Because nothing is more powerful than quiet confidence, not arrogance. But that calm certainty Marcus Aurelius spoke of, living a life measured by your own soul, not by shadows on the wall. I remember once, Mariam asked me, "What if people judge me anyway?" I smiled gently and replied, "They might, but they don't get to live your life." That was the lesson she taught me in return, that we can never silence the world completely, but we can learn whose voice truly matters. And when she learns that from you, not because you told her, but because you lived it, that's when her hidden strength begins to shine. But there is another longing, deeper than the need to be heard, the longing to be chosen, not just loved. Have you ever looked into her eyes and felt that her question wasn't only, "Do you love me?" but something quieter, more fragile. "Do you truly choose me above all else?" Let me tell you a story that showed me the difference between being loved and being chosen. Her name was Hia. To everyone else, we were simply a couple in love. But inside the walls of our private conversations, something far more delicate was unfolding. That night, we sat together beneath the faded yellow light of her living room, where our story was still flowing from that deep, quiet pause. Hia suddenly turned to me and asked a question, gentle yet enough to make my heart stop for a beat. "What if, right now, standing before you was a woman more beautiful, more witty, more everything, would you still choose me?" There wasn't a trace of jealousy in her voice, only fear, a deep, quiet fear, that my love for her wasn't because of her, but simply because I needed someone, anyone, to fill the emptiness inside me. At first, I thought, isn't love itself enough? But then, as I often do, I remembered Marcus Aurelius. He once wrote, "When you are offended by someone's fault, turn back to yourself and recognize your own failings." Those words slowed me down, made me look deeper into Hia's question, and into myself. Had I sometimes loved out of convenience, out of habit, out of loneliness, rather than from a true and deliberate choice? What Hia needed wasn't just to hear the words, "I love you." She needed to know that I had truly seen everything, her flaws, her laughter, her wounds, her quiet battles, and after all that, I still said, "It's you, only you." What many men don't realize is this: a woman can sense hesitation even when your words sound perfect. She knows when your heart is still searching, still keeping an eye open for something better, newer, even if you never admit it. Marcus Aurelius gave me a simple yet life-changing reminder. Let your love purify you, not poison you. To truly love Hia meant choosing her every single day. Not because she was perfect, we both weren't, but because I saw something in her soul that I couldn't find anywhere else. Ask yourself, have you ever said, "I love you," simply because you feared losing her? Because it felt like the right thing to say, or have you ever slowed down, looked deeply into her eyes, and silently chosen her, not as an escape from loneliness, but as a conscious act of devotion? When Hia felt that difference, I watched the fear fade from her eyes. Not because I promised her a forever, no man can truly guarantee, but because she knew I had chosen her, not just the idea of being in love. And that, my friend, is the quiet weakness in many women's hearts, not merely the need to be loved, but the deeper, hidden longing to be the one, the irreplaceable choice. Marcus teaches that love born from strength, not desperation, is the love that frees both people. Let her see that your love is not a habit, not a convenience, but a deliberate choice, made again each day, even when you could have chosen differently. Because when she knows you love from strength, not from need, that's when she feels safe enough to offer you her truest self in return. And that's not just love, that's devotion. A rare gift, far rarer than most men ever realize. So why does this matter? Because if you understand these quiet weaknesses, not to control her, but to protect her, you become the kind of man a woman truly respects, trusts, and loves deeply. Marcus Aurelius never wrote directly about dating or modern love, but his wisdom still leads us to the same truth. Master yourself first, and you will love her better. So, if you've made it this far, remember to subscribe and share this video with someone who needs it, not for manipulation, but for mastery, to become a man of calm strength in a world that often rewards loud weakness. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next video.